Welcome to Who Cave Conversations with Mark. It's Ace.
Hello viewers, welcome to Who Cave Conversations with Mark. It's Saffronic.
Live from the Who Cave, you're watching Who Cave Conversations with Mark.
Hello and welcome to Who Cave Conversations. I'm Mark, the Doc MD74, and today we're going to have a look back at a special piece of not quite television from the 90s, but we're going to move into that and discuss that a little bit, but a very exciting little project, and I thought what better way to share it with three very special guests that I have. So we're going to kick off quickly with my co-host Alex, who's standing there on the right to me. How are you, Alex?
I'm very good, thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Alex. And then below us, we have two very special people and integral to Saffron. And if you don't know much about Saffron, you're going to know a lot more about it by the end of this video. And firstly, we have creator of Saffron, Mr. Paul Thomas. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you very much, Mark. Good to be here.
And it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. And then obviously, off to the side of you, we have Sophie Aldred. How are you, Sophie?
Great, probably a lot better than you because at time of recording it's what, 4:30 something?
Approximately, yes.
Yeah, it's nice, a pleasant evening, but
it's called commitment. The problem with doing this little show with a few of my friends from the UK, it's the time zones, especially with daylight savings, is fun to navigate. So, but. As I said, we're here to sort of have a quick look at Saffron and its initial development into its release with the Real-Time Pictures DVD. One other face that's missing from here today is Keith Barnfather. I've reached out to Keith. He might have another chat to me one-on-one if there's something we haven't covered off, and he would fill us in, especially from his point of view with the project. So let's have a look at Saffron. Paul, maybe in a nutshell, can you sort of give us, for those who've got no idea what Saffron is, let's put them in the picture. Tell them about it. Give us a bit of a rundown.
Right. After 10 years in animation, I decided to make a series. Just make it. Not commissioned, just make it. So I made 6 5-minute episodes, and it was destined for Channel 4, which was at the time very keen on animation, very keen to promote it. And I worked alongside a very good producer, Richard Evans. And Richard said, when you finished it, I'll be very interested in showing it in my program, which was called The World of Animation. So for 9 months, we set out, we made this series. And I wanted a live action character and a technique I'd used in the television series Heartbeat, which starred Tony Hart. So I had the technique, I had the idea, I just needed a female character to lead it. I had the name Saffron, and I had no idea at all who it could be. And then not long after, I was watching an episode of Jack and Ori, and I saw Sophie Aldred, and I just really liked the way she delivered to the camera. I thought her voice was brilliant. I thought her presentation was brilliant. And I thought, right, I'll attempt to contact her. So I knew only one theatrical agent, a lady called June Epstein. So I go through Spotlight, which is the British way of finding people in the theatre and television in those days. And lo and behold, Sophie's agent was June Epstein, which was phenomenal. So I rang June, told her what I wanted to do. She got straight onto you, didn't she, Sophie, if I remember rightly? Mm. And in no time, we did meet in her office. Is that right?
You've got a better memory about this, but I do remember meeting you sitting in her little office in Golden Square, wasn't it?
Golden Square, yeah. yeah, so we met, and Sophie was keen to do it, weren't you? So the first thing we had to do was to get photographs taken, and this was the idea of a live action character in photographic form, in black and white, against color animation characters. And I needed a photographer. And once again, one of these extraordinary moments, Sophie said that she had a very good friend, Steve Cook, and he would, she felt he would be very keen to do this. So I don't know if the three of us met, but I certainly met him and discussed this project, and he said he would be happy to do it. And also he had this venue, you're seeing it here, somewhere in London, I honestly can't remember where.
No,
And it was no, I really can't remember, but he got it all set up, and it was January 2nd, 1990. We took 2 days to take these photographs, and the photographs were taken from my storyboards, and I had to work out all the animation sequences for every episode. And then Sophie mimed, really, didn't you?
Yeah.
And I hope these pictures that you no doubt will see prove what a brilliant actor Sophie is.
Oh, shucks.
To be just, I know, to be just
the tenors in the post.
Thank you. To be able to talk to nothing, to be able to act to nothing. There's nothing there, obviously. But I had to direct her, excuse me, with what actually was going on around her and showing her the storyboards. And as I recall, it took 2 days to do the whole series. And then I simply had to wait until Steve got them all developed. And I can remember them being delivered, and it was fantastic, just loads of boxes of photographs. And as soon as I saw them, I knew it would work. They were so brilliant, as I hope you can see here. Fantastic pictures. And that was it. The production could go into full blast then. And that took us 9 months. It took to make 6 5-minute episodes.
It's amazing how long, like especially with animation, we're talking in the times of when everything, unlike today where everything's done, computer graphics, and it's done in a time where frame by frame stuff, which we'll go through a little bit later, but the actual process of doing animation these days compared to back then, you're doing every single frame and photographing it, and with the animation style that you took, taking that combination of artwork and imagery with Sophie, and then obviously cutting it up into the ideas and images that you wanted to portray, would have taken a phenomenal amount of time, like you said. So I guess, which leads me to Sophie. I know it's, what year did we say? It was 1990, I think we're talking. So this is, for you, this is post Doctor Who / Survival, which was 89, I think it went out. Guess let's get from your perspective, Sophie, from, how this all came about for you. And, again, it said it was 2 days or something I think you did back then, which is now turned into a conversation we're having in 2025. So...
it's extraordinary, isn't it? Well, yeah, I do remember June called me and said, come in and meet Paul. He's a nice guy, in my office. And
your tenors in the post too,
she really said that.
And then and we did, and it just sounded like, I'm one of these people who loves an interesting project. Sylvester McCoy is the same. And we do tend to have very interesting lives because of it. And I thought, this sounds like something I would really like to do. And I've always loved, I can do your normal straightforward acting, but I do love kind of physical acting as well. I suppose, like you said, mime, although I'm completely untrained, but there's something about character work I really enjoy. And also, I had first met Steve Cook, as you mentioned, the photographer. We'd done a shoot together for Doctor Who magazine. He was working for Marvel at the time. And I remember meeting him, and he had really good ideas. So we would go up, like we snuck up onto the roof of North Acton rehearsal rooms and did a really great shoot up there. And, you know, he said, what would happen if you jumped off that thing there? You know, and so I jumped off like this, my arms out. And then we'd just go and do shoots for the fun of it. And then he was a graphic artist, really. So he would design stuff around it. And as soon as Paul said, I need a photographer, I thought, right, Steve's exactly the right person for this job. And he loved it as well. He was, because he's a very creative person. He works for DC now, the other side, out in LA. And if anybody's interested in his work and his life, he does a fantastic blog called Secret Oranges. So look that up. And he was interested in graphics and comics, and so it was a match made in heaven, I felt, him and Paul, for this project. And you seem to get on very well together, Paul. I don't know if that's...
We did. And we didn't live too far away. The three of us didn't in those days, did we?
No, you were in Deptford, I was in Lewisham, he was in East London. Yeah,
I was in Bermondsey area.
Bermondsey, that's right. Yeah,
Oaken Road. So it was a lot easier for us to all share ideas quicker, wasn't it? And to organise things.
And I think in those days, you were used to just doing stuff. Well, I suppose I still do in a way. Somebody says, "Can you do this?" I go, "Yes," and enjoy myself doing it. And these 2 days, I remember you said you'd bring some black kind of tight-fitting clothes, and you'd explain to me what you were going to do. And you explained so well that I knew exactly what it was going to look like. I mean, I wasn't quite sure with which graphics, but as I was doing those poses, I was imagining myself, because Paul gave me really good direction. He wasn't just saying, you know, look up to your right. He was giving me the scenario. You know, you're about to be, what's that one with my hands? Is that the ink?
I think that's the giant picking you up.
Oh, that's the giant. That's right. So you said, you know, there's a big giant. He's about to pick you up in his hands, and then he's going to carry. So it was easy for me to imagine that. And I just, how many photos did we do, Paul? Was it?
We did over 1,000. I know that.
Yeah.
There's over 1,000 of them.
But it was quick. And I enjoyed that process, because you weren't hanging about. It wasn't like some photographers and some directors like to sort of line the shots up, and that gets so boring. But both you and Steve recognized that I was sort of improvising in the moment, and we needed to keep the pace going, which I really enjoyed.
It looked very natural to you and spontaneous, and that really comes across, I think, in the photos. I think it's second nature, really, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's something that I just could do, yeah.
Was that around the same time you were doing corners?
I think I was definitely doing corners and words and pictures, and I think I was doing Melvin and Maureen's musicograms as well, larger than life character. I don't think I'd gone on to do Minnie the Mini Magician and Zap, but that was a similar character, you know, this large character with big gestures. So it's good practice for that.
That's it. I've been just having a bit of a look. I think we discussed this previously, Paul. I found a quote from Animator magazine that was done way back around the time that I think this was being proposed. I think it's sort of implied for people those who don't know or not sure what saffron is. It says, take 2 lumps of Monty Python, a spoonful of rhubarb, and a splash of psychedelia, and stir well for 5 minutes, and that's saffron.
Wow, great
Yeah.
review.
And you know what? And as I said, I've had been lucky to have the privilege to sit and watch. You've shared some of that stuff with me now, and I've had a chance to watch it all properly. And that animation style, it's of the time, and when you compare it to how they do things now, very differently. But to take those 1,000 images that Sophie sat through and did all those wonderful, poses and emotions, and then you're able to put them and portray them into your into that form, which was really great.
I think it's got a freshness to it, looking at it today, because we're so used to the onslaught of CGI stuff and all that kind of animation. The sort of back to basics, hand drawn, mixed medium approach, really just, to me anyway, feels sort of new. It feels refreshing.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the evolution of Saffron as we progress a little bit. But so obviously, traditionally, what would happen, you would go around and spruik an idea to the television networks. But obviously, in this occasion, you've gone, you know what, I'm going to make something and I'm going to sell it that way. Because that's traditionally not the way it would have been originally done, is it? You would have to pitch ideas to the, I guess it was it the big four back then? It would have been BBC, ITV, Channel 4. So you would have had to go around and, obviously try and sell that idea, I guess, as it progressed around. But you took the gamble and went, you know what, I'm going to make this first. Now, going back to that, I think we've discussed previously, you had some conversations. Was it someone at Channel 4? Am I correct?
Richard Evans was a producer that had already shown a film I'd made on his series, The World of Animation, which used to go on a Saturday lunchtime. And I said to him, I'm working on this idea. And I said, but it's a series, it will be 6 episodes. He said, it doesn't matter. Bring it to me. I can, if not every week, he could show them throughout however many episodes there were. And it was going out in the December of each year. So the idea was that it would be broadcast December 1991, because we finished too late for 1990. So that's the only reason it wasn't shown that year. And by the time I'd got to the end of 1990, Richard had retired, and his replacement did not want to know anything about my work at all. And twice she turned Saffron down without even seeing it, just the proposal. And I had someone approach her from a completely different angle through another producer, and that producer liked it. And she said, well, I'll show it to my boss. And when I heard who her boss was, I said, and it was the same thing, complete rejection before ever being seen. So I don't know how, but I got wind of BBC Two had a series called Deaf 2, which was aimed at Ute, Ute and all that. And I just cannot remember how I got to see someone in the production crew said, this is very interesting. I'd like to see this. So when it was ready to be looked at, I took in a videotape of it, and he just took me into this room without even a chair or a cup of tea, with a television, and put it in, stood there with his clipboard, and he looked at it. He looked at one episode, I think, and he looked at me and said, well, it's not Walt Disney, is it? And I said, no, it isn't. It's me, isn't it? And with that, he said, well, I can tell you now that my boss won't like this, so I'd rather not show it to her. And that was Janet Street Porter. And I'm thinking about it, not at the moment, at the moment I just wanted to, well, just, he would have had to need a few days off work, let's say. But when I thought about it, she would have just thrown that out because it was not Ute. It wasn't cutting edge, all this, So that was it. Excuse me. I can't remember at all approaching ITV. I don't know why, if I didn't, but I've got no recollection. I've got no notes or anything about ITV. So that was it. It just sat in its boxes and its cans and everything. Never dreaming in a million years. I mean, how could you ever imagine? Because as the years went by, British animation changed dramatically with the coming in of all the computer systems. And it made so many of us redundant, absolutely unwanted. Animators, cameramen, editors, all thrown out very quickly. Because we're always
the industry changed, but also so did the kind of programs that were being produced.
Yes, absolutely. And I didn't look at it for years. I mean, years and years. And moving to Salisbury, I came across from London videotape, and I thought, well, I'll give it a look. And it just seemed different. It always looked different to me. I just did. It looked different. And I remember Jerry Anderson in an interview saying, if you approach someone in television and they say, oh, I don't like this. This is, he said, you bet it's different. So stick with it. Because in his eyes, that meant you had something different that particular producer or co-producer could not even conceive, And I did wonder if that was the case in that it just looked, it couldn't be fitted anywhere. It wasn't this, it wasn't that. I mean, Sophie would tell you the television was, I can't say for now, in age groups, wasn't it? Very specific age groups. And I was certainly asked, what's it aimed at? I said, well, everyone. And they said, well, how can you aim at everyone? I said, well, it is. Children could watch it, adults could watch it, old folk could watch it.
That's like a lot of television back then, Paul. And I remember, as a kid growing up in Australia here, a lot of the shows like Rhubarb and a lot of those shorter, Danger Mouse, they're all short snippets of time. And looking at, Saffron now in reflection, I would have liked to have seen that as a kid, a little 5-minute slot in between, or as part of a show, like you said, with the Tony Hart stuff.
Yeah, Heartbeat and Take Heart, I think they were staples of my childhood viewing. The amount of times that I would send my drawings off to the BBC PO box address and then watch eagerly in anticipation in case it was going to come up on the gallery that they always showed a viewer's artwork. And I think there was one time where it must have been on the board, but you only saw like a corner of it. I thought, oh, there's my whatever it was that I'd drawn. So never got shown.
Did you get your prize? Forgive me, Mark. I've never met anyone who's actually had a prize from this. Did you get your prize, Alex?
Well, no. Didn't even get shown.
It would have been a book token. It was a bit of a letdown, I did wonder if it was a check, for Hollywood, but no, it was a book token. So now the world knows.
That a lot of those programs used to have little intermediate cartoons or little intermediate things within them, and it's just sad that it didn't get because it's their loss. That it's would have looked really great on television, I think, now, and especially now when we have this big thing for nostalgia at the moment. I think looking back at television from the 80s and 90s, I think we have a newer appreciation, and this falls into that category, I think. Would you agree with that, everyone?
I think it's funny, the 90s, we forget, was a bit of a funny time. As well as the pigeonholing. I got it too. Well, are you an actor? Are you an actress? Are you a presenter? Are you a singer? Do you do musicals? What are you? They want to really pigeonhole you. Now that's not so common, which is brilliant. But in those days, it was very much, we'll put you in a box and we can't work out if you come out of that box. And then another thing was that I think this was and is unique, as you're saying, Paul. There's nothing else that I can think of that's like it, and that made it difficult because people couldn't. It was ahead of its time and behind its time, because I think if it was the 70s, I think people would have got it. I think 70s TV, if you look at it, was much more innovative and much more experimental. But by the 80s and 90s, things like producer choice had come in. It was very market orientated, very driven. It was also that sort of lads thing going on, quite cheap telly, where with I'm not dissing Chris Evans and Britpop and things like that, but it was very, very much quite, lads, and this kind of whimsical, psychedelic, strange thing didn't really fit, I think.
I would have loved to have taken it to Apple with the Beatles. Can you imagine me turning up with that in 1968 in their offices in Savile Row, saying to John Lennon? It's Bob Godfrey, who is where I started my career at Bob's studio. We made Rhubarb and Henry's Cat. And he knew John Lennon. He knew him very well. And he did. And Lennon invited, I don't know if you know this story, Lennon invited Bob to his home in 67 to consider animating his drawings from his books, Spaniard in Work and all that. And I don't know why it didn't happen. It may be that Yoko Ono arrived and John changed his mind, but Bob knew him very well, to that extent that he was invited round, to discuss it. And my jaw just fell when I knew this. And then I thought, God, if he'd taken me round to Lennon's house, he said, well, look what he's got. You should see this. Can you imagine? It would have blown his brains out, wouldn't it? But alas, I turned up in 1990.
But I think it is unique, but it's quite an interesting. As I said, I've sort of had vague recollections of Saffron over here, because obviously we read a lot. Anything Doctor Who related or people involved with Doctor Who, generally there's some sort of coverage somewhere. As I said, we, as fans, I guess, appreciate the work that all actors do on television programs. We tend to follow, I think it's just a human nature thing, we tend to follow the work of that actor and some of the things that they've done and follow them through. And especially within the wilderness years, when abruptly, sadly, that, Sophie and Sylvester got cut short in 89. You're then starting to want to look for more. So then obviously we show an interest in what you guys are doing as actors in other projects. And then I guess this sort of comes, but it was only really, which leads me to my next point, is when this DVD was released, which is probably the next transition or the next evolution of Saffron.
Long, long ago, in 1990 in fact, I spent a couple of days having hundreds of photos taken of me for an animation project called Saffron. Then things went quiet. What happened to the series? Did it ever get completed?
In
1989, I decided to make a big step forward, and I thought I would just make a series rather than go around with a begging bowl. We just had a rough idea that these would be very surreal stories, because that's where my mind is. I would have to write scripts, I'd do storyboards to show to producers.
He told me about this project and I could just see it. I think many people would just go, because using yourself as a stop frame animation figure is probably not on a lot of people's radar. I would hold a pose, Steve would take a photo. I'd hold another pose, Steve would take a photo. I'd do an expression, Steve would take another photo. And you could very clearly see the finished product, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Shakespeare, Thomas, Byron, Bronte, Shelley.
He showed me the fact that he was painting and drawing onto the actual film itself. And he then showed me, obviously when it was finished, he showed me the finished article, and I loved it. I thought it was totally unique. For this project to have got some kind of life after all this time, I am absolutely thrilled.
Alex, you had some involvement with that, because I do a little bit of work with REELTIME as well for Keith.
I've been designing the DVD covers for various titles for Keith, which started off with the Doctor on Display series, which looked at Doctor exhibitions, and then did some other bits and pieces because we realised we'd worked well together. And then one day along came Saffron, so that was new to me. I was introduced to it and to Paul via Keith. And I think the first thing that struck me was I just thought, this is so Sophie. It reminded me of Corners, which was a program she did after, and perhaps, I can't remember, maybe during as well, the last years of Doctor Who. But that was a kids program. But, you know, she was the life and soul of the thing. It was really quite bold compared to a lot of other shows like it. There wasn't really anything else like it. It's hard to describe it. But I made a connection with that through seeing just stills of Saffron. And you know, Paul's artwork and the collages you did, you know, even as a still frame, it looks animated. You can imagine it all coming to life.
I found it quite interesting, and we've had some chats about this, Paul. But Sophie, just I guess for you, back in '90, it was 2 days of work, and essentially for you, I guess, was that about it? When you'd done those 2 days, was that sort of it for then?
Well, Paul and I kept in touch, and Paul was very determined and was going around, as we say, knocking on doors, and it was always there. I was very fond of the project, even though it's only 2 days. It was a very memorable 2 days, and also the lead up to it. And then Paul was in touch with me. We'd become friends and was telling me what he was doing with it, and so for me it was something. Oh, that's such a shame that it never got done. And then lo and behold, Keith pops up, Keith Barnfather, who he says to me occasionally, when I ask you about what you did and things like, will you remind me to not ask you things like that? Because then he gets involved in stuff. And then this one was very different though. But Keith and I had worked together a lot, and we'd come up with ideas for stuff, and we did a thing called Sophie's Choice, which was a pilot for a series, and we did all sorts of bits and bobs together. I've really I love working with Keith. And he texted me one day, I think, and he just said, "What do you know about Saffron?" That was how it started.
What do you know about Saffron?
Oh, okay, yeah. And so I called him and I said, "Do you want to get in touch with Paul?" Because I still had his number, still was in touch with Paul. Very, very on and off, Paul. I don't know whether we had seen it. Well, we certainly hadn't seen each other for years.
That's right.
And then,
I think in that time,
yeah, you'd moved to Salisbury, I'd moved to Hertfordshire, and Keith said, I'd be really interested in this. So I think, well, you take over, Paul, from there.
Well, I had a text from you, didn't I? And I read it, and I thought, I've read that wrong. And I read it again. Seriously, I thought, no. And I don't know, whatever I said in my reply to you. And then I had an email from Keith in which he immediately said, are you up for this? And we, discussed what he would propose to do. And I thought, he's ready to do it now. He doesn't want a conversation and, I'll get back to you. And it was always like that, wasn't it, Sophie? And they'll always get back to you in a fortnight. Mm. It was almost a traditional thing to say. But he was talking now. Let's do it now. Mm. Are you up for it? And I found myself saying, yeah. And he said, what format is it in? Is it this? Is it that? Do we need the legs? And I said, no, we've got an immaculate 16mm print of the entire series on one reel, every episode, untouched. But I really had to reassociate myself with this series. 32 years had gone by at that point.
Mm. What did you think of it when you saw it again for the first time in a long time?
Well, I thought, I was astonished what we did. I really was. And I was wondering how on earth we did half of it. You forget, you do so much and you do it instinctively.
Stuff kind of takes on a life of its own after you've finished it. And a lot of the time when you look back on something, whether it's a piece of art or a piece of music or whatever, and you think, I did this. And then how the hell did I do this?
Yeah, exactly. And I did something that Walt Disney advised all animators to do, is to keep a production book, which is simply, it's just a folder with or booklet where you keep all your notes, all of them, from beginning to end of the production. And that was the key to remembering what we'd done. And then I came across the photographs and everything else, and I took a while to, I had to time travel. I really did, all those years, and then watch it again. And I watched it and thought, my God, we did all this. We did this. We made a trailer. And then Keith started digging for, so I mentioned that we did promote it at something called Nebula 90, which was at the Adelphi Hotel in Liverpool. This was at Sophie's suggestion, and she wore her Saffron sweatshirt on that day to help promotion. And I had posters made and badges and stickers and all the rest of it. And Keith said, were you ever interviewed? And I said I was. I had to confront about 500 Doctor Who fans who were absolutely mystified. Who the hell are you? What's this? So I did my bit, however long it was. And he said, were you interviewed with Sophie? And I said, no. And it was just David and myself. And he said, yes, you were. And he found some footage of the three of us being interviewed. I've got no recollection of that at all. So that, I believe, is on the DVD. He slipped that in. So I was really impressed of his research. He found it. And he came around to my house and collected it and all the soundtracks. I mean, I had to find all this stuff. And he took a picture of me with all this, just of the fact that it actually had happened. And I took one of him. And I thought, what? And then he had to find a studio to do the transfer from 16mm to a digital format. And he did. He found them in Newcastle, and I just dreaded that he would get back to me and say, "Oh, Paul, the film's blank." You know, after 32 years at that point, it's just disintegrated. It's all washed up, and your soundtracks are all gone. You know, and I waited and waited. Nothing happened, and then eventually I had a call from Keith to say, "We're sending all your stuff back." And I thought, well, he hasn't said it's a disaster. So I emailed the studio in Newcastle, and I thanked them for doing it, and thinking, what are you going to tell me? And they said it's been done to broadcasting quality. You could broadcast it now. So there was nothing wrong with it at all. And that had been in a can for 32 years. Honestly, 32 years untouched. And that's what's on the DVD.
Yeah.
It's amazing that you didn't chuck it away, isn't it, Paul? Really? Because you could have.
I thought I'd be buried with it.
Things were lost. Yeah. To your chest.
You know, and he finally goes in the pot, chuck that in with him, all the soundtracks, all the photographs, you know.
You're right. It's amazing how well it's lasted. Like to have, especially film stock, to. So you've obviously just had it in the right atmospheric conditions by chance that it's preserved so well.
It's a miracle. It's
amazing. And obviously Keith's a bit of an unsung hero about finding things and trying to drag them up and to show the world. You know, he's done a lot of different projects over the years, and Sophie, you've done a lot of work with Keith over the years, and you know, and some of the latest ventures with Neil Cole, another mutual friend of ours, that has his museum has gone from a little, you know, place under his basement to what is now, and you know, he's
still a little place under his basement. It's just got more in it.
Yeah, he just it's like a TARDIS. He manages to squeeze.
Yeah,
I remember going in there when I was with you, Alex, and we went to visit, and to see and finally catch up to him face to face, and just I couldn't believe how much stuff he has got squeezed into that very small space. It's a credit to him, but you know, he's another very passionate man, and obviously, you know, Keith likes to share stories with people, and this is another one of those great stories, I think, that needs to be told. And so then that's why...
Neil's got Sophie, you gave him Ace's boots.
I did. Well...
Are they the ones you're wearing in the Saffron photo shoot?
Yeah.
It all connects.
And they're in the museum, is that right? Have I understood that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
In Northumberland. Yeah, and those trousers, I might have them somewhere, were the jodhpurs I wore in a Battlefield, I think it was, which is one of the Doctor Who stories. So I was very much, and the top, in fact, the black top I was wearing was a spare top that they bought me for Doctor Who as well. So I was really wearing a complete Doctor Who outfit.
There's always a connection.
Yeah.
You can't escape it, Sophie. There's always a connection.
And the only reason I requested it like that is for me to cut it out against a white background. It was easy to cut out. That's the reason. It could have been blue, you know, but black would have made it ideal for the photography, obviously.
Yeah. So
a question for both of you, I guess. When the film got restored, what was the most surprising thing about seeing it again when you rediscovered it, or anything that you'd forgotten, or something that struck you about it all these years later?
Well, I knew that there was a mix. I always did all my mixes in camera, as we say. That being, I did it there and then in the shoot. I couldn't tolerate waiting for post-production mixes because I wanted to see if it worked straight away. And I missed one in the ink hat. And 32 years later, that's the first thing that came to mind. Did it mix? Because you indicate to the lab where you want this mix, this post-production mix. And I thought, did they do it? And they did. And that was the first thing I looked for.
You always remember the mistakes, don't you? Or the criticisms or whatever.
That's right. And I'm sure we spelled onomatopoeia wrong in what is that one? The Silent Classic. I'm sure we did. David was adamant that's how it was spelt, and I believed him. And I'm thinking, is that right? It may actually be spelt wrong, but other than that, it. To answer your question, Alex, sorry, I was astonished at the quality of the color and of the soundtrack. How sharp the soundtrack was after all that time, just on a 60mm magnetic tape, which is when you hear it in the studio, when it's recorded and mixed in the studio, it sounds phenomenal. But when it's squashed onto this little 16mm, I know it's different. I can hear the difference, and you think, oh, the dynamism isn't there. But it sounded bright, it sounded really sharp. So that's what surprised me, was the quality of the color, the sound, and that mix that they did do it all those years ago. What about you, Soph? What did you think?
I was amazed at how sharp it was, because bear in mind that you'd given me a video of it, which I must have somewhere. And I was surprised at how much I remembered. And then what was really surprising, though, that we were watching it on a big screen at the Everyman Cinema in Salisbury, and it was just looked brand new. It looked like it had been done yesterday. That was really great. And then the other thing that not surprised me so much as really gratified me about that day was that Keith's son came and was watching it for the first time, Harry. And Harry's, I can't remember how old he is. He's not that old. And there was a mixture of ages and people there. And everybody loved it. And Harry got up afterwards and actually said, yeah, I'd watch this. And you think, okay, it's done its job. It stood the test of time, because it's timeless, really. It's one of those things that it's not set. It hasn't got a time period, has it? It's so, it's unique, as I say. Yeah.
There is an element I can remember of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, that there's a bit of Alice in Saffron, in that she doesn't attempt to put things right, but tends to get involved in something. She doesn't question it as much as Alice did, but I began to realize that she was solving things quite early on. And I thought, well, we can't have that in every single one. She's not a solver of these stories as such. So I threw a couple of perhaps loose ends in, especially with the last one, where the idea of the two films running together and one runs out, and you're left with just the other one. I thought, well, she didn't solve that one. So it just wanted to give a little bit more depth to a character in a very, very short time. But they're the sort of things one would need to realize, or would Saffron always solve it, So she nearly always did, but I did on seeing them back, especially when we were editing them. There's an element of Alice in there, I think.
Very much.
And you know what? Then we fast forward to 2024, when obviously the real-time production was put together. And like you said, Everyman Theatre was the location chosen. And I think that was a discussion that was had about, well, how would we like to, put it out there or launch it? And I think that was just something that was conversation, Paul, I think that was had with someone from the Everyman Theatre about using that place for a launch.
Yeah, I met the manager just in the street. And I already told him about this project elsewhere. And I said to him, we're looking for a venue to do a documentary. I said, they want to make a documentary about this. He said, we'll use the Everyman. We can't use that. He said, and I said, yeah? And he said, of course you can. So Keith said straight away, well, can you send me pictures of how it looks, the setup, and the theatre that we would use? And we had to use it before it opened. And it happened, didn't it, Sophie? You were there? I was there?
It was quite a challenge to actually book it when we wanted to, because it wasn't just, the manager was amazing, but it wasn't his decision. It had to go to the general manager and publicity person for all the Everymans over the UK. And so we were tearing our hair out a bit, weren't we? Especially Keith.
Yeah, we were. Poor Keith, yeah.
Yeah, because it was kind of getting quite near the time and they needed to kind of okay it. But actually on the day, it was an absolutely brilliant venue. They couldn't have been more accommodating, better hosts. We had everything available to us. It was a very lovely, comfortable little theatre to be in. It really worked for the launch, didn't it?
It did. Astonishing. And the irony, of course, is that the series was made for television, which was my canvas, as it were, not cinema. It didn't interest me, but television did. And when it's finally seen, it's in a cinema. I thought, this is madness. But
blooming big canvas.
Yeah, massive canvas.
Gigantic.
It's like Leonardo, isn't it, with his Last Supper, isn't it? You know.
Yeah.
But I guess, Sophie, this was your re-involvement with the project, essentially, wasn't it?
Yes.
So to do a bit of I guess the Q&A and to have that big space, to have this thing that was developed and spruiked for television back in '90, to then all of a sudden to be on a big screen. And as you said, the quality of this now that's been restored is broadcast quality. So it actually looks, fantastic. It'd be like it was made yesterday. So I guess talk us through the day itself, and then obviously preparing the DVD release. Alex, you've got a little bit of an involvement in this as well now, don't you?
Yeah, well, my small role in it was doing the design of the DVD cover and the posters for the launch, and I think we did a pull-up banner as well. So that was because I'd been doing Keith's Doctor on Display covers, and I think we've just struck a good, fun working relationship. He knows I'm reliable and I can deliver what he wants, and he says, "Oh, I've got a new project for you," and he was really passionate about it, and he described it to me, and it sounded really interesting. And I don't think I'd come across it before, because I think there might have been a clip on YouTube or something, but it was new to me. So he sent me over a load of the graphics and photos, and so I hadn't seen any of it, but I had quite a vivid description of how it was. So my job was really just to come up with a DVD cover that would sort of reflect that look, which was really fun to do. And so I think we put maybe 3 or 4 ideas together and sent them over to Paul, and I guess that's when it started to feel like it was becoming a reality.
Yeah, and obviously we're going to put links to the DVD that's available via Keith at REELTIME.
I'd hate to imagine how many frames are in a 5-minute skit, so to speak.
A lot, I can say, quite a lot. That's Chris Shelley, may I say.
Yeah,
it's nice to name these people because they were so brilliant. I mean, Chris had his own company in the West End of London, so he was regularly used on all manner of things, programs and films, but he was outstanding, and it just lucky to come across people with a similar kind of off the wall frame of mind. Steve Gabell, my editor, was the editor from Take Heart, and I approached him and thought, well, if he's anything like his editing in that, then this is the man for me. And he was And then you hear about what else he'd done, and I was very impressed with that. And I said, will you be interested? That machine there is called a Steenbeck. Very, if you look at any documentaries about anybody my age from the film world, you'll see one of those. And that's how you laced up your soundtrack with your pictures. So a little bit of history there. I think in the DVD, there is a mention of that. I'm sure there is on the documentary. So you're looking at history there, historic machinery. How you can see the spool of film there, can't you? Can you see it?
It's a different era of television now. Back then, it's in some respects it still feels kind of recent, but so much has changed technologically and the way things are made since then. And obviously, a few years after, computer graphics started getting much more affordable and better, and gradually became more commonplace. I think in where there'd been traditional animation in the past. I mean, how if Saffron had gone ahead back in the day, how do you think it would have been received?
Well, that is so difficult to say. You would have had an audience that was very familiar with animation and in this particular way of making things. I like to think I would have attracted an audience that would have liked the Magic Roundabout, for example, because of, yes, it was made for children. However, when Eric Thompson got hold of it, it was made in France, but it was narrated and the scripts were in Britain by Eric Thompson, Emma Thompson's father. And there are lots of under the surface adult. It's a fine balance, and I hoped that we'd found that balance with this. So yes, it's Sophie Aldred from Doctor Who. However, she's a different character here. This is her playing Saffron. I like to think it would have had at least a cult following, I like to say there would have been an audience for it. However, you would have had to have got them to watch it on Channel 4, because it was once told to me, oh, well, anything on Channel 4, no, we're not interested in that. Only on the BBC, dear boy, So it was like that. Channel 4 was still considered to be a child almost,
Excellent. Even back then, they were still the channel that would show stuff that none of the other channels would. They would show more risky films or stuff that the BBC wouldn't dare show for whatever reason, or they would champion the arts in a different way, or show animated content like they still sometimes do, or the short films and independent productions and that sort of thing. So I think logically it was, in theory, would have been an ideal home for it. You think in a parallel time, Doctor Who ended at the end of 1989. Sophie could have clearly gone on with Saffron and enjoyed a wave of success with it. Then again, in that same parallel world, Doctor Who never got axed, so she would have been busy being ace.
Now, 12 months later, Saffron's had another lease of life moving forward, which now the original voice in Saffron, who did that, Paul?
That was David Owen No-Smith, who had done voices for my characters on the Take Heart and Heartbeat series. He was also a musician, and I just experiencing working with people, I made a decision that I don't know why, but I wanted a separation. I wanted picture's always more important to me than sound, you see. So I just felt David and his working partner, Paul Wakin, would just get on with it. And he had a setup that he could do it. He gave me a couple of variations for a theme tune. I was so keen for an unforgettable theme tune, because we come from the era of classic theme tunes, don't we? You know, they're just have been with us all our lives, really. And it was almost there to me then. I think it's there now. And I thought, I'm going to be really radical here. I said, can you do something on a saxophone? Thinking. And of course he did, and he came back with the melody that you hear. And I picked up on the fact that I could animate the opening credits to it very well. It was as you move up, Sophie, don't you? It's actually with the rhythm of the theme tune. So I thought, well, they do blend together. So I was happy with that in the end. And I thought it came with some extraordinary stuff. And I love Viv Stanshall, and from the Bonzo Dog Doodle Band. And I just had him in my head. I could hear that all the time. And I said to David, I can't get that out of my head. So he said, well, David Owen Smith does voices. He's done some of my stuff. So I put it to him to do the entire soundtrack.
Which has led on to the current project, which is what I wanted to very quickly discuss in relation to, you've gone from the visual, we've had the DVD release, and now we've got a new release, which is the audio version, which is obviously involves Sophie again. So very quickly, Sophie, do you want to run us through how that came about, moving Saffron into 2025?
Well, yeah, Paul emailed me a load of really interesting poems, which are his completely unique, inimitable, kind of psychedelic, strange mind, which somehow I get. You know?
It's a unique world, isn't it?
I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky that you understand all this lunacy. Yes,
I sort of do get it, and so every time he sends me some poems, I dive into my airing cupboard, which is where my so-called studio is, and it's quite nice because it's a little world, you know. Get absorbed and read these poems, and I love reading poetry anyway. It's a really lovely thing to do, I've really enjoyed the ones. Gosh, I've got one to do, haven't I, that I left out for.
You have. Get back in that airing cupboard.
I need to get back in the airing cupboard. That last one. But they are wild, these poems, and I couldn't wait to hear what it was going to be like, because I think on their own they would be a bit like the photographs, you know. On their own, yeah, they're okay, but actually with the sound, they're amazing.
Which leads me into Alex. This is where you've become involved in Saffron V2, I suppose we'll call it, getting that music or soundscape. Share with us a little bit about that, mate.
Yeah, I think it just felt like quite a natural process, because I absolutely understood what you were trying to achieve with it, and it was almost like the next phase of Saffron from the animation is this whole sub world of her adventures, which are all very sort of slightly surreal and trippy. But you and I discussed it, and we thought, yeah, it needs some kind of, not music as such, but a musical element or some ambience, some atmosphere, and just something to really, really elevate it some more and take it from being just a spoken word recording to a bit of sort of auditory art. So it helps you visualize it as well as just listening. And Sophie's voice is such a dream to work with. The delivery of everything is so perfect, and we've tried all number of different things, from actual having music in the background to just having sort of the sound of the sea or the sound of wind and air, or all kind of sound effects or quirky things, and it still works. And I think that's a really fun way of taking it into a different dimension and bringing it more to life. And I think the Saffron EPs that Paul's been releasing on Bandcamp, they're really hidden gems awaiting discovery, especially for anyone that's a fan of Sophie's work. Well, that was a completely unexpected thing, because obviously when I'm not doing designing stuff for artistic stuff for music, I'm doing music stuff. So I think I'd just been chatting with Paul, and you'd done the first Saffron EP, which was more or less just more of a straightforward spoken word piece. And I think we just hit on the idea, why don't we try and come up with a sort of a soundscape for it? So not really music as such, but more like an atmosphere or an ambience that would sort of reflect the sort of very strange and surreal worlds that each little short segment is taking place in. And I thought that would be a really fun challenge to see if I could do something that worked, in addition to the joy of listening to Sophie reading your amazing words. But I think because my stuff's really atmospheric, at least it's supposed to be.
It is.
It is, mate. It very is.
Converse about it, usually over Messenger, discuss the things you're writing about, and thinking, well, how could we illustrate that without cluttering it with sounds? Or it's just about creating the right atmosphere and elevating the vocal a little bit, whether it's through effects or reverb, without distorting it too much, but just to put it more in that weird space.
No, great. And as I said, Alex, you do a lot of that soundscape stuff and music stuff, and you've got quite a back catalogue, which I'll share the links in. But thanks to your kind permission, I use that for a lot of my little projects that I've done, in some of these conversations that I have too, and it just it just gives it a little bit more of an edge. And I guess with these EPs, Sophie's voice, and obviously after watching one of the clips, which we're going to discuss in a second and launch live here for everyone to see, it just putting Sophie's voice to the updated images, to the soundscapes. It just gives it another new dynamic and another new edge.
And may I just say as well, David Skinner, who made the series with me, when we did the Everyman, he said to me, why didn't we use Sophie's voice? And I thought, never again will I not use Sophie's voice.
Oh,
it's perfect.
Never.
It does. It actually. And as we'll attest, if you're happy, Paul, we'll lead into that next little bit where. Do you want to talk to us a bit about Questions to Clouds, which is going to be the video that we're going to run live here on screen?
Very simply, I took photographs of the sky one very sunny day in Salisbury, and they happened to be on the same page as my ever-growing imagery of Saffron. And when I was writing the third EP, Saffronic, I'd just, it's a very, I think in a certain way when I think of this project, I just do. And I thought, oh, Sophie could have a conversation, or Saffron could have a conversation with all these clouds that we forever there. And that's all that was. That was just trying to come up with as many questions that Saffron would pose, in a very Alice kind of way. Again, they don't answer. I don't think they do. But
they might do.
Sorry,
you might be able to hear them.
Well, in the Saffron world, you may well be able to hear
Anything's possible in Saffron world.
Anything is possible. And
I absolutely, first time I heard it, I just absolutely fell in love with that track. I don't know, my first word as a child was clouds, apparently. Maybe it's got something to do with that, but
it's all meant to be, Alex. All meant to be.
I just thought it was absolutely mystical, and I thought, yeah, we've really got to do something with this. It was just such a joy to listen to.
Well, everyone, without further ado, I think what we might do is we're going to cut to our video clip of Questions to Clouds. Hopefully.
Questions to clouds. Do clouds think about stuff? Are they perilous or rather reserved? Shall I make a hole in the blue? What's behind? Do clouds whisper to other clouds? Have clouds ever seen their reflections in the sea? What do they think they are? Does the land look good to clouds? I've got a question to clouds. Are they struck at night by the starlight? What if the clouds were golden and the sky turned purple? How would that go? I'm sure they would like that. Where would I put a cloud if I took it home? In the spare room, but then it would be static. It wouldn't like that. How far does a cloud travel? Does it ever come back? Do clouds dream? Why are clouds so quiet? There has to be a loud cloud. They don't look worried. They don't look amazed. Are they free? They seem to be. It all makes me feel so mellow.
Have it. Questions to Clouds. So we're going to make that link available. As I said, by the time this video goes out, we're going to have links available to that. We'll have links for the EP stuff, and obviously we're going to have links to Realtime where people can find themselves a copy, have their own personal copy at home on the shelf. Now, Alex, I always like to talk shop about things that are going on in everyone's lives and projects. Obviously, just sidetracking slightly. For those who don't know, we sort of met through a couple of mutual projects. Obviously, we've already established that you're quite an established person in the music field, and can make some pretty interesting soundtracks, and obviously proving that the Saffron was another challenge for you outside of your usual realms, and I think it's turned out quite successfully. And obviously, obviously done some books as well. Just share with everyone just a little bit about yourself, Alex, and what you've done in recent times and anything that's coming up.
Yeah, no, I'm obviously a lifelong fan of Doctor Who and science fiction, which has always been a driving force behind a lot of what I do, because I work as a digital artist and illustrate book covers. I'm a designer, which is my main profession. And this year, somewhat unexpectedly, I've found myself turning into a writer. Firstly with Evolution of the Toy Dalek, which was published in March by Telos Publishing, which is a history of toy Daleks from 1960s through the present day. So that's been sort of a lifelong ambition to produce something like that. So that's been amazing to have that out in the world. Which is obviously where you and I met, Mark, and first connected with you helping me with a lot of the photographs. So I've been on a bit of a roll with the writing, and with my friend John Collier, we produced Blackpool Remembered, which is a visual history of the original Blackpool Doctor Who exhibition, which ran from 1974 through to 1985. This has been a real labour of love for us. Both books are available on Amazon, and Evolution's also available on the Telos website. But yeah, no, these have been two projects that have really been close to So in the spirit of writing about things that I really have a personal affection for, my next project, which I'm currently on with, is a book that's going into great detail about my favourite David Bowie album. So it's a different area, but music and Doctor Who have been two passions, so they're great things to write about. And obviously, I also do my own music as well, as we've already discussed. So
yeah,
man of many hats. I think sometimes, you find the best hat to wear, and okay, this year I'm going to be doing artwork, or this year I'll be mostly doing music, or writing was not something I ever thought I'd find myself doing to the extent of being published or self-publishing. But there you go. You never know what opportunities are going to come your way, do you?
So in winding up, but Sophie, probably to you, cover off a couple of things I was interested in, because things outside of Saffron. I was just having a look. You've got a new book that's can you want to talk to us a little bit about that? It looks quite interesting, about Ace's jacket.
Well, here's another idea that I ran with a fan who I've known for years, Sean Levy. He said to me one day, "Why don't you do a book about your jacket?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, well, we could probably get a pamphlet out of it." He's a really great cosplayer, and he said cosplayers are desperate to know where it comes from, the whole story of it. And then he sent me a couple of ideas that he'd had. He'd written some little ideas for stories about a couple of the badges. And I suddenly thought, oh, hang on a minute. And I thought this is a great idea for an anthology of stories, as well as the cosplay book. Now, the anthology of stories, I started sending an email to my mates in Doctor Who and beyond, saying, pick a badge and be inspired to write a story or do a painting or something. And all of them came back and said yes. So we had about 60 something people. So the book grew, basically, and it was double the size we originally thought. A great friend called Barnaby Eaton-Jones thought it was a fantastic idea, and he published it with AUK Publishing. And it's the most beautifully designed book. Robert Hammond, who's a very talented designer, he designed it all. And so that's book one. And then we're about to embark on book two. And I'm really chuffed with it. It's a book for charity, so the money is going to 2 charities for people with autism, a couple of charities over here in the UK. And I'm really pleased with it, really pleased. And the number of people who said yes, so David Tennant's written the foreword, and Hugh Bonneville's written a bit, and Frank Skinner, and Jodie Whittaker, but also there's people who've never written before, fans. There's a Australian friend of mine, Nick Moyle, who's written a story. They'd never written a story before. And then at the back of the book, we've got a section called the Galactic Gallery, which is people wearing their Ace jackets and what Ace means to them.
That's great. Because I stumbled across it on a website, and I thought it looks quite interesting. Is there variations of the covers as well, Sophie, or something? I think I saw is there another part that's coming?
There's a hardback, and there's what is a softback, what they call a limp back, which I think is hilarious. And then there'll be the same for that one's called Ace Jacket, the inside story. And then the cosplay one, which we're starting to work on now, is called Ace Jacket, the outside story.
Nice.
Brilliant.
Lovely.
My husband thought of that, actually. Have to give him a credit there.
Well done, husband.
May I
just say something quickly about that? One episode in Heartbeat, I made very short animation sequences to be part of the program. I started one with a story about 2 badges that have a conversation, and I drew Sophie wearing that jacket just at the front. and you zoom in on these two badges, and then that's the story. These two trying to pull faces at each other. Very simple thing, but that was really missed. That was completely, but they are. You were in that as well, you see.
What was that in Heartbeat?
In Heartbeat, yeah.
Wow.
That's how it's only about 30 seconds or so. And you've got shades on, saffron shades, and you're leaning against a wall. And they are. That was in. And my producer had absolutely no idea what I was talking about.
Wow.
Honestly.
Oh my goodness. Now here's a challenge. Here's a challenge to the fans to find that bit of Heartbeat.
I was going to say, Sophie, I think now the fans, after they watch this, are going to go and through Heartbeat and try and find it.
I bet somebody will. They're so clever. If
somebody finds it, they can drop a message in the comments and feel free to share it.
That would be amazing. I'd love to see that. I never ever knew that, Paul. Thank you for telling me.
Did you not know that? Did I not? Oh, I didn't. I didn't realize that.
Another Doctor Who piece of trivia.
Yeah.
I can put it in my CV that I've been on Heartbeat.
You've been on Heartbeat without even knowing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. In winding up, guys, is there anyone who's got anything they want to raise or share before we close off today?
Go on, Alex. Go for it.
I don't know. Maybe a question for Sophie, because since these characters all end up being sort of connected in one way or another, as we're finding out on air, how did voicing Saffron sort of compare to voicing Ace or performing characters in corners? And what would Saffron and Ace have made of each other had they met?
Ooh.
That's a great question. Well, firstly, the voice. I never really think too hard about a voice that I'm doing. And Saffron's voice is definitely slightly different to mine. It's definitely, listening back to that just then. Sometimes Paul writes, obviously, a narrator's poem for Saffron, and that I do as me, as Sophie, more. But yeah, I think I just think somehow of Saffron, and then it kind of, the voice comes. It's not very helpful, is it? But it just seems to happen. And then, gosh, yeah, what would Ace and Saffron have thought of each other? I think they'd have got on quite well, actually. I think Ace would have sort of appreciated that she'd got this slightly weird friend who was, yeah. And I think Saffron would have quite liked Ace because she would have quite, I think, respected her ability with a baseball bat.
I think Saffron would question things, whereas Ace would just launch head on at them.
Yes,
if they were,
if they, I'd love to see them as flatmates.
Oh, so
Saffron and Ace.
Who's got money out there? Come on, let's do this.
The ideas are coming. Let's go.
I think Saffron would definitely be the one doing the washing up.
Yes, but she'd do it in a very unusual way.
She would, yeah.
But I just thought questions to badges. She would ask the badges what they were.
And Ace would be going, what the what?
What the what? Yeah. Do badges smile? Do badges think? It's there, isn't it?
I thought you was going to say questions to crockery.
Questions to crockery.
Yeah.
Could do a whole
album.
list
is endless, isn't it?
Too, couldn't we?
Oh yeah, and then Sylvester's question mark jumper could come in as well, and the question mark umbrella.
Questions to spoons. Yes.
Questions
and how to play.
Yeah.
I've actually had Sylvester play the spoons on me. So
on you?
Yeah, when we were over here in Australia.
Of course.
While sitting next to him at a table, we had an event here with Janet Fielding and Sylvester, and I sat next to both of them, and he was regaling the table with a tale about how the spoons were played, and next thing I know, I'm just getting belted with the spoons. So, yeah, it was quite fun.
Hey, if you haven't had the spoons played on you by Sylvester McCoy, you haven't lived.
That's right. Well, I have, so I've now lived.
Alex and
Well,
I
guys,
haven't lived yet.
I appreciate everyone's time today, so thank you so much. As I said, I'll be putting all the links in the descriptions where we can get copies of the DVD. Sophie, I'm going to include some links in relation to the Ace Jacket book.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So I'll put that in there, so if people want to get them. I know I'll be getting a copy. So look, as said, and any questions or comments, please feel free to like and subscribe and add them in there. And if you've got a question you really want to know, I'm sure I can reach out to Paul and we can find the answer for you. But again, thank you everyone for your time today. And until next time, we'll see you all again soon. So bye for now.